Joining us for today's webinar on digital impact assessment, exploring different ways data is enhancing IA practice. Today's webinar is being hosted by IAIA, or the International Association for Impact Assessment. IAIA is the leading global network on best practice for using impact assessment to make better and more informed decisions. My name is Keisha Blaser. I will be facilitating today's webinar, though you will mainly be hearing from our presenters who you'll meet in just a moment. Before we get started, I have a couple things I'd like to go over. First, there's our social media handle there, as well as a hashtag you can use. So if at any point during today's webinar you hear something that you would like to share with your networks, please feel free to do so. Next, before we get started, I'd like to point you to some resources available on our website, www.iaia.org. Now, if you visited our website in the past few weeks, you may have noticed it got a bit of a refresh. And one of the things that is a great new tool for everybody is we have a new and improved resource library. And so one of the things you can find in our resource library is a collection of our webinars on demand. You see just a couple there. There's one on digital impact assessment, perspectives on the use of AI in IA, as well as a recent webinar on psychosocial impact assessment, but there are a variety of different webinars on health, biodiversity, resettlement, and more. And the nice thing is now you can go into our resource library and search by topic, by tag, as well as by resource type. And so if you want to find only webinars on health, for example, you can do that via search in a much easier way than before. Next, I'd also like to point your attention to some of our upcoming events. Most notably, we are in preparation for IAIA 26, our annual conference being held this year in Quebec City, Canada at the end of May. At this time, registration is not quite yet open for the conference, but we are accepting abstracts, and those are open through the 30th of October. So if you have any interest in submitting an abstract, please visit our website to find out more information about that. Next, at this point, we have a variety of online training courses available for registration. Our OTCs are live courses conducted via Zoom with an expert IA trainer, and we have 3 different courses running in October, as well as 2 in the end of October and November. The categories are all listed there. There's a variety of topics, including stronger argument writing, conflict management, resettlement, effective engagement, and EI follow-up. So I encourage you to look at our website there and get information on registration if you are interested. We also offer training through our professional development programs. We have courses on both EIA, which is our Foundations of Impact Assessment program, as well as a whole course dedicated to social impact assessment. Registration is closed for the current course running until December, but we will run both courses again starting in January, and registration is open now for both those courses, so you can find more information at our website. And then also in our resource library, we have a bunch of free downloadable publications like our best practice principles, our IFAST tips, and more. Now, a couple pieces of housekeeping before we get started. If you have joined us before on a webinar, it may look a little bit different. There's a new update for the software. And so I just want to point your attention to where you can find a couple things. First, in the chat box, that is where if there's any messages from me to you about the webinar, any resources, I'll put that in the chat for you. The questions tab is where you can input questions for our speakers during the Q&A. We'll have a Q&A of about 15 minutes at the end of today's webinar, and you can put your questions there at any time. Do not feel like you have to wait till the end to put your questions in. In fact, it'd be great if you could put those in during the webinar as you think of them. Next up, if there are any materials for today's webinar, you will see those in the materials tab. And then if something isn't quite right with your settings, if maybe you can't hear a speaker great, or if something is off with the sound, check your settings and you can adjust things there. And then finally, today's webinar will be recorded and it will be emailed to you directly within a day or two of this live broadcast, as well as available on our website in that resource library, again, within a day or two. Now, before I'll hand it over to today's webinar facilitator, Josh Fothergill. Josh is the lead author of both the State of Digital IA Practice and Enabling Digital EIA in Nigeria. He has regularly led in-depth reviews into IA systems, including designing the EIA Quality Mark Scheme, authoring UK's Proportionate EIA Strategy, Global EIA Accreditation Systems, and linking the circular economy and IA. Josh is the founder of Fothergill Training and Consulting, where he provides independent expertise and capacity building services and has trained well over 1,200 IA professionals across the globe. So with that, Josh, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keisha, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to this webinar in the Digital Impact Assessment series. So you can see, sorry, just go back a second. You can see we have three main speakers today who we'll be hearing from in relation to the use of digital data and related systems to enhance impact assessment practice from around the world. And in fact, from where Keisha is at IAIA HQ in the middle of the States through to where Raymond is over in Hong Kong, we're spanning 13 different time zones and a good 2/3 of the global population. So you're in good company. The 200 and odd of you who are listening live and the many more who signed up to listen. So just with this webinar series, I always give a little bit of context around digital impact assessment and why I lead the session and just what is digital impact assessment. So as Keisha mentioned, in December 2021, IAIA and Fothergill Training and Consulting launched this State of Digital Impact Assessment Practice Report, which provided a global review of where practice was at that point across the globe, and we saw a lot of impact assessment, be it adopting digital approaches and systems. Since then, there's been a regular webinar series, although this is the first for 2025, so apologies for that. I've been a bit busy with other things, but you can see there all the IAIA webinars. You can obviously find them on the IAIA website, or if you go to the link at the top of that page, you'll be on a single page where you can link to each recording as well as the report and the report into the Nigerian systems. So one of the things that we found in relation to digital impact assessment is, depending on how involved you are with digital technology and approaches, you'll have a very different view of what digital impact assessment is. And therefore that 2021 report brought together a kind of broad definition, a kind of holistic definition to help give some frame to what do we mean by digital impact assessment. Because of course, we're online at the moment, we all use our computers to write our EIA reports, we're not handwriting them by any means. So the definition of digital impact assessment, the use of advances in digital technology and their applications in the pursuit of enabling more effective impact assessment practice. So it's about advancing impact assessment practice and enhancing it rather than simply using data or digital because it's available. As part of the report, we identified 10 elements, and this was just back in 2021, so 4 years ago, that were commonly being seen within digital impact assessment, and you can see them there, some of them coming from outside the impact assessment field, the use of large online systems, data capture from satellites and other things, artificial intelligence, etc., and we'll hear about some of those today. And then there were digital systems specifically being built for the impact assessment process, digital impact assessment platforms. Again, we'll hear about one of those today. But what we've really seen over the last 4 years is many of these different groupings being merged together to create more enhanced digital systems. And then the AI aspect of this, certainly what we've seen this year with IAIA's conference in Bologna back in May, over in Italy, talking about artificial intelligence and impact assessment in the age of artificial intelligence, is AI is very much like a ketchup that's being added across all different aspects of impact assessment. And we've looked at that in some of these webinar series, and I'm sure we'll get back to it in future ones. But today, very much the aim is to focus on the data side of things. And one of the reasons for that is the report identified that many examples of digital approaches and technologies being applied and identified key ways to see improvements in impact assessment and changes in impact assessment through different areas and different ways of doing things. And data was a key one of those in terms of access, in terms of integration, and our ability to trust that data. And then how that linked into improvements around quality and cost, how it might improve engagement in the process, and also how it might link across to safety, privacy, and security concerns. So those were the different areas, and that's why with this kind of return to the series, we're focusing on different ways that digital data is enhancing things. We have 3 speakers today who will be coming forward to talk about that, and they were all present at the Bologna conference earlier this year from the IAIA, and I kind of identified them as very interesting talks. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first talk, Raymond Wong, talking about digital data for live mapping and impact analysis. Raymond is CEO of Oden Systems. He's got over 20 years of experience managing and leading consultancies, and also in developing kind of systems and implementing spatial and 3D visualizations for environmental agencies, both in Asia and in Europe. So hopefully we'll be able to get Raymond's slides up shortly, and off we go. Thank you for turning on your camera, Raymond. Just need to unmute yourself, and hopefully your slides will pop up shortly. Fantastic, there they are. So I will disappear now. Thank you. Over to you, Raymond. You just need to unmute.
Right. So let me share that again. Right. So I hope people can listen to me. Right. So yeah, it's good to be the first speaker. Right. Especially to talk about the interesting subjects like the exploring different way data in enhancing the IA practices. But if you look at it, I think the way and data should be a companion instead of things of its own. I mean, simply, the data required will depends on how they are being treated. So that's why you just can't consider just data all the way in isolations. In fact, if you look at the conventional method, I mean, we are sort of like looking for data layers or model parameter. Ideally, they're in some sort of like GIS format or other format required for modeling software, etc. If they're not, then you have to convert it somehow, while the digitalization, conversion, or addition, division, something like that. And if you look at the different way of how data are being processed and managed, I mean, we sort of have two major approach. One is a commercial software, and the other, obviously, is the open source tools. And then once you have all the results generated from different applications or software, and then you have to compile them together into report, PowerPoint for presentation or collaboration, something like that. So this is how we handle data and the way for it. But then perhaps we could rethink what data is, simply because there are now many data available, trusted data available from the web in the form of a report, hard copy, etc. They are not quite in the GIS format. And then we can also look at the way we think the tools we've been using so far to prepare, to process, and manage it. So essentially, we were talking about a number of software tools, etc. But then could we have something simple? Yes, visual approach to be able to load that or import those things to set it up, as well as to make it simple and easy to communicate the design scheme option as required by a different IA scheme and whatnot. So today I'm going to share two major approach. Firstly, perhaps we could explore the approach of a freeware. Freeware means something you don't have to, well, you don't have to involve software licenses, but then it got, well, something you can get a copy, have it installed, set up, including upload the data, change the look and feel, etc. And then you will also come with all the best practices tools, allowing you to set up something pretty quick and simple, in a quick and simple way for concept proving, prototyping, or share among a small group of people, etc., or in-house. So if you look at, once again, the data we might have, I mean, besides some open government data, we also got all the report and things where you can get from the various sources. So in the context of freeware, so let's see how we could put put that together. Say, for example, we can look at example here. Well, we got example for like Quebec and also Wales. That website here is actually what we set up as a freeware. And you can see you can change the different map background. Right, you can change the color, layout, the way you want it. You can change the logo, etc. And it had all been set up with all sort of data in this tree here. And just now we try to upload a project boundary in certain format. And then you can like sort of like, wow, you see here, you can have different data here, some with symbology here, some polygon things, vector data, and things like that, covering the whole of the wells. It is most of the data are available in kind of a link from various sites. And so a couple of data we collect in some vector form, and then have it import into the freeware. And here you also got a number of the best practices map toolkit, allowing you to do something like, for example, if I have a site here, right, I just load it here. I also got some point data here. And then if I try to evaluate the impact of it, like doing some screening and scoping things, I can zoom into that and then use the toolbar to specify a buffer distance from which it will generate the area of influence. And then from that, I could sort of run an analysis, allowing me to pick up all the labeling, feature, role, specific size, SSSI, country path, things like that, all within that freeware. And you can, well, sort of like set it up with certain guidelines and not to set it up in whatever environment you have, and then open it for a small group of people. So this is one way of doing it in a kind of like freeware. And then we can also look into another more interesting way of like having sort of a different assessment result visualized in a more intuitive way. And in that case, you have an under one roof tool, allowing you to do the broad brush or preliminary planning from the data available, or you can get from the web or some sources. And you also got the chance to build something up here, either through a library, or you can construct it, or you can also superimpose a different assessment result you could have. So let's take a look at it. So here is the report we could get in a PDF format for landscape and visualization impact assessment. Firstly, we could set up a project, right, so that you can track the whole thing from day one, from initial planning to assessment, monitoring, etc. I mean, up to you. Now we go into the project, right? And then we can search the location, which is somewhere in UK. Now, we can load that images from that report we just captured, right, for development. And then again, we can specify the location so that you don't have to find your way within a country in UK. Now, we need to reposition that drawing in its proper positions by going through a proper process called georeferencing. Once you've done that, I mean, essentially in 4 points, then you will put it into where it is, and then we can change the transparency to make it, well, outstand a little bit within the imagery background. And then we can also give it a name so that we know what the title of the project. Right. Now, we could try to build something to visualize it. I mean, this is a model we can grab from a library if we don't happen to have a BIM model or other 3D model. And we can reposition it, or we can move it to where it should be, rotate it, okay, to the right orientations, and then move it across, right. and then you got a little bit more realistic illustration on estate being built. And we can also do some heads-up digitizations like that. That would essentially draw a rectangular block, right, like that. So if you know the exact height of the building, you can change it, like something like that, right? So this is a simple process where you can repeat yourself, and with that, okay, then you have the whole estate. Now we can run some sort of like air ventilation things to see how well it is by specifying different wind directions, speed, etc. Right. And one thing that isn't being shown here is the shadowing. I mean, you can also do some shadowing or adjust the orientation, height, and etc. And then you can also place yourself within that little estate and see how you navigate and walk around it. Now we can put into another layer of assessment result again from a report we could get from the web or be given. And so beside the air ventilations, we essentially repeat the whole process by taking the screen cap report and then going through the geo-reference process to put it into where it should be. And then, yeah, like that, we upload the noise assessment assessment result for the take flight, right? Put it into where it is. Again, go through the geo-reference process, and we can also choose to use elevated layers, right? Meaning that noise grid is actually 4 meters above the ground. It's not on the ground, it's above the ground, right? So firstly, we just change the name of that assessment. You see here, we can be able to overlay or see different assessment all within one single applications. And then we can give it another name, right? And then since or adjust a little bit, I mean, if your draw is not too precise, since this is an assessment, well, since this grid is 4 meters above the ground, you see here, we can move it vertically, right? Now this is the left wheel. So we can also change to the top wheel, etc. Right. So this is to show you we be able to elevate that layer to an elevations where that assessment is made, right? And then we can also load in a specific legends. So remember, for different assessment result, we have different color code, we have different legends. So that way we can see how the assessment is about. Now we can adjust the height and load back the previous model we have created within the same project. So now we be able to see multiple results in a proposed as a residential project in its locations, right? Things like that. So this is a little bit simple way to allowing you to use the data you could get to perform a realistic assessment or visualization or review of a proposed project in a very simple way. So the whole idea is to make our life much more easier like that. I mean, hopefully with this sort of IA tool, well, we could enjoy our life as an environmental practitioner, well, much better and more in a relaxing way. So basically, so a bit short, but this is my presentation. So Josh, I pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. Really interesting presentation showing the different uses of the software, and I believe you were quite heavily involved in the system that's now applied by the government in Hong Kong,
Yeah, that's right.
kind of builds off this as well, doesn't it, as well? So thank you very much for that. That's brilliant, and thank you for sticking to your time. That's fantastic as well. Very good for me as facilitator. Should give us plenty of time for questions. So a couple of questions have come in. Do feel free to keep asking those as we go along, either things that come up in relation to Raymond or from either of our next presenters. Our next presenter is Liv Tunen. She is project lead at Space for Good over in the Netherlands. She's leading new developments in terms of Earth observation, tools and services, and those in relation to, obviously, environmental impact assessment. Liv studied over at the University of Delft and has worked in Earth observation in relation to quality control of data for both international development and climate change activities. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Liv. You just need to unmute yourself there and I'll disappear.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you everyone for being here at the webinar today. I'll show you more about our work, how we leverage machine learning and remote sensing for environmental impact assessment. Remote sensing gives a global data set from satellites, and machine learning helps us turn that data into insights, like, for example, carbon storage or land use change. And I know that many people nowadays are thinking about AI, and when people think about AI, they often think about ChatGPT, for example. Well, who doesn't? But ChatGPT is a large language model, and a large language model is one type of AI. But machine learning is another type. And machine learning really focuses on teaching algorithms to recognize patterns in data. And that's also what is very useful to use when we have satellite imagery. So today, I hope you will walk away with a little bit more knowledge on this subject. So I will give you a short introduction on remote sensing itself, what it is and what it can be used for, and then show why combining it with machine learning is very powerful by giving you an example with our work, from our work with Volkswagen Climate Partner. So just a little bit about us real quick. Space for Good provides environmental insights to unlock, accelerate, and scale sustainable impact for our planet and its people. And we are doing this by combining Earth observation, which allows global scalability and cost efficiency, and local geoinformation, ensuring the highest accuracy and local context. And this can be done by using artificial intelligence to create deeper insights into the data, and also being able to give predictions about what's coming in the future. In the current context of the climate crisis and accountability, it is very important to have transparent, trustable, and timely insights. And this is exactly where we believe that remote sensing is going to play a vital role. So more about remote sensing. Maybe some of you are not really aware what it is, so I want to give you a short introduction. Remote sensing simply means collecting information about the Earth's surface from a distance, so without being in direct contact. This can be done from space, in satellites, but also from aircrafts or drones. And there are two types of remote sensing. First, you have passive remote sensing, and these sensors capture natural energy, most of the time from sunlight, that is reflected or emitted from the Earth. A good example is optical satellite imagery, and this works similar to your camera. So if you take a picture, it will also capture actually what is reflected from the sun into your camera, and this is also how the optical satellites work. And then we have active satellites, and active satellites, the sensor sends out its own signal and then measured how it bounces back. And the positive thing about this thing is that you can also use it in the night and also through clouds, for example, where if you have a picture and there's clouds, you cannot see anything. So to get a bit deeper into this remote sensing, and then first the passive one, as I mentioned before, it relies on sunlight reflected on the Earth's surface, and different materials like soil, water, vegetation, urban areas, they reflect energy in different ways. So satellites measures this reflected energy in what we call spectral bands. For example, we can measure the spectral bands in the visible light, like we can see with our own eyes as well, but also near infrared or even shortwave infrared. And then each of these type of surfaces has its own spectral fingerprint, as we can call that. So by analyzing how strong is the reflection in each band, we can identify and measure things like vegetation health, water content, or land use. In the middle picture, you can, for example, see that even though, of course, vegetation is green and we can see it as green, but actually a much higher reflectance comes in the red edge and near infrared. So when we can measure those things, we can also measure changes in vegetation much easier. And the last GIF, you can see an image, but instead of only showing red, green, blue, like we can see from a camera, we kind of highlight different bands. And you can immediately see that it also highlights different parts of the image. So either urban, forest, or even forest fire. Then we can go to the active. And I would most likely want to focus on the radar as sensors. Radar satellites emit microwaves and record this return signal. The strength and timing of this return depends on surface roughness, moisture, and structure. So for example, smooth surfaces like calm water reflect the signal away and therefore appear quite dark, while rough areas like forests can scatter the signal and appear therefore bright. So in this image, for example, all the brightness is forest, and then you can see how it changes from forest to farmland, which is giving it a different kind of reflectance, and therefore you can measure deforestation really easily. So the colors signify when the deforestation has happened. So this is very useful to see it. Well, I hope it was not too technical and you got a bit of the idea of remote sensing. We call remote sensing, we can also call it Earth observation or EO data. And the benefits of EO data are that it has a global coverage. All the satellites are going around the Earth in orbits that often provide global coverage. Therefore, the solutions make it very scalable. You have a lot of different sensors that also can be fused together or reused. And one of the most important things is kind of the digital integrity component. So all of these measurements are done in the same way, which makes it, you can compare one region better to the other region because the measurement is done in the same way. And another cool thing is, of course, which is very special actually, is that when you have to analyze or you have to screen a new area that you've never been, you can already go there, let's say, with the use of Earth observation, and you can even look back in time. There's a lot of free data available that is there already for years in the past, so you can kind of time travel and see what the situation was a couple of years ago. There's a lot of freely available data available from either the European Space Agency or NASA, which makes it quite cost effective. And of course, there's already a lot of science based on this. So if we combine it with AI, there's even more that we can do. We can combine different data sources together, drones, satellites, but also ground measurements, which are often, of course, telling the ground truth. We can process large volumes of data effectively. It can identify patterns and detect anomalies that are not always visible to the human eye, and especially within these huge data sets. It can translate raw data into measurable insights. So as I was mentioning before, instead of having a value for the reflectance of a certain band, which of course is not going to say anything, with the use of AI, we can actually get this into measurable insights and KPIs that we can use for our reporting and our impact assessment. It recognizes trends and forecast change, so to understand the past and current developments and therefore predict also future scenarios. However, and I also want to be always very clear on this, and I think everybody should be aware, it is not a silver bullet. The reason why is that depending on your application or the KPI that you want to develop, you need some kind of you have to choose which satellite data to use. And sometimes you need spatial, which is the pixel size, or temporal resolution that is either not available or not freely available. So then you have to pay for it. Of course, clouds and atmospheric conditions can have an impact on satellite imagery, as I mentioned before, especially for optical satellites. And then this is one of the most important things for everybody working with AI and machine learning. Garbage in is garbage out. And what I mean with this is that machine learning models or AI models are trained on training data that should kind of reflect the truth. But if that training data actually doesn't reflect the truth, then the models will also not work. And this is very important to understand for everybody working in this field. Besides, there's no one size fits all. So a model that has been trained on the Netherlands won't work necessarily in Japan or in the US or in any tropical area. So this is also very important to understand. And with this, local context matters. So models perform best when trained and validated with sufficient, accurate, and locally collected data. So these are just things to keep in mind when you're working with this kind of data and with these kind of models. But if you know how it works and how to deal with it, it can be a really powerful tool. So one of the use cases that I want to share with you is a project that we've done with Volkswagen Climate Partner. Also in the conference in Bologna, we presented together. So what they wanted was a due diligence and impact monitoring support for offset projects around the world. The challenge was that they had a high dependency on freely available datasets in terms of natural datasets. And what they found was that these datasets were often coarse resolution and a lot of uncertainties, because these are often models that are global models and they don't work at a local level. Yeah, and besides, they also wanted a very viable system that can give you results whenever you need it. And in terms of capacity, if you have to do all of these tasks manually and manually analyze all the data, this takes a lot of work. So our solution was to develop together a platform including key insights, and in this case, forest insights, created with satellite imagery and AI. So just to quickly showcase the platform, I hope it's going to work out. Yeah. So you can just, the idea is that you can zoom to any jurisdiction in the world. You can put on satellite imagery for context, and you can also add a GeoJSON file from your own projects or ideas. And then you can look back into time with the high resolution satellite imagery, just to have a bit of an idea about what is happening. So here there was no forest, and throughout the years, forest has grown, as you can see here. And as I mentioned before, high resolution open source datasets are not always working. And this is one of the examples. Hansen is a very famous dataset, but here it doesn't show the dynamic of forest grow in a couple of years. So to overcome this, we made our own datasets, as you can see here. And yeah, you can see that the forest is growing, and you also know by how much, and you can download immediately the data for your own reporting. So here's forest loss over the years. So where was the forest loss, by how much, and also forest gain. And these can be the KPIs that you can use in your reporting, and also a forest loss risk map. So where is deforestation likely to happen? Then there's a tree canopy cover. So how did the canopy structure or the forest structure change over the years? And you see indeed that the forest is increasingly growing and also more dense. This is a legend which is across all regions, so you can compare regions together, above ground biomass as well. And yeah, to a platform like this, much more datasets can be added, and we're still in the process as well to maybe add some other types of datasets, not only related with forest, but can also be related with water or social or other kinds of datasets that are useful. Okay. So the technology that is behind, and we'll take you step by step. But first of all, as shown in the demo, open source global datasets based on remote sensing are not always accurate at a local level, because they're often globally trained. And these datasets can have a spatial resolution of 30 meters, and sometimes it's preferred to have 10-meter resolution. So we developed, in this case, our own layers. And the first step is that we use open source satellite data from ESA at 10-meter resolution, and also information which was a little bit more sparsely spread of vegetation structure. And then the second step is to take this data and use machine learning processes to kind of scale up these sparsely spread vegetation structure data to the whole picture. So then we have this resulted then into geospatial forest layers. So where we started with just an image, now we have layer of canopy cover, canopy height, and biomass. And as different countries have different classification of what actually means to be a forest, these can then be used to classify forests depending on where in which country it is. And when analyzing these classified forest datasets over time, you can get forest loss, forest gain, but also where's the risk of forest loss. So this is the trend and impact analysis. At Space for Good, we're also working on other kinds of datasets like carbon sequestration or biodiversity datasets. Yeah, so this is the final slide of my presentation. I just want to say that remote sensing and machine learning are powerful tools for scaling up insights and bridging spatial and temporal gaps in field data. They allow us in a way to time travel, and so you can see a state of a place from years ago, or gaining perspective on areas that are otherwise nearly inaccessible. And so we believe that these technologies can really bring down the number of field measurements needed, but it's still important to remember that these technologies should be used in the right way and should not completely replace ground data or local knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liv, and thank you very much also for sticking to time. Really, really fascinating presentation, Dev, and the type of analysis you're doing, because yeah, in some parts of the world we might have quite good data in terms of that starting point of the impact assessment of not just what's the current baseline, but what are the trends in that baseline. But in many areas we don't necessarily have that data, but actually it is there in the satellite record, and then using the machine learning, using your analysis to help bring that out. And also then, as you were identifying along those road routes, those risks of induced impact of, obviously, because there's a road there, the potential for deforestation increasing, and that data showing the improving areas of forest and less. Really, really fascinating. If you've got any questions for Liv in relation to her presentation, there's a few come in already, then please do send those in. We have one more presenter before we go to the Q&A. So our next presenter is Nikola Nikacevic, who is founder of Eon Plus and principal co-author of the Envigo digital impact assessment platform, which is what he's going to be talking about. You may recognize him from our first webinar in this series, where he was talking about impact assessment systems, but the system has moved on in terms of its data, in terms of activities and that kind of thing. So we really wanted to bring him back and give him an opportunity to show a different way of using digital data. And Nikola is also a professor of process systems and engineering. So over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Josh, and thank IAIA for this second opportunity to present Envigo. So as you said, a couple of years ago, we had a presentation of the overall system, digital platform Envigo, where we presented the approaches, then the functionalities and capabilities of the software. Today, I will focus more on the importance of data structuring and software modularization for digital impact assessment. So I assume that many of us can agree that impact assessment are diverse in terminology, applied methodologies, but also in information depth and base of presentation. Overall, this makes impact assessment studies difficult to review and then make decisions, improvements, but also to compare different projects and different studies, even more difficult to reproduce them or to reuse them for the next project partly or completely. So digital tools promise to solve many of these challenges, but when you look at the situation on the market, we are not there yet. In this slide, you can see I have grouped and classified well-established, let's say, digital software and platforms that are used for impact assessment. First of all, there are online reporting applications that emerged around 10 years ago or a little bit more. essentially they transfer study contents to the web. And this is very important, as they are allowing virtual collaboration and enhanced engagement, and as well as to enhance this presentation itself. But actually they have some issues with the data processing, data structures, and so on. So they're limited in the application. On this second is very well known, GIS and dispersion simulators. They're used for decades already, and they use really powerful geographical maps and processing tools, and they are very useful for spatial analysis, as we saw it in previous presentations, so risk scenarios, and for the impact identification, which is one of the key parts of the impact assessment, but only to a certain extent. They could not be used further on the whole assessment process. The third group are widely used EHS management platforms, their online cloud platforms, that they could be, and they are used for mostly for follow-up, for monitoring and management planning and realization. So they could be adapted, but with a lot of effort to do a complete impact assessment study. So I believe that those established platforms are not sufficient. Why? Because as they lack a specific impact assessment process flow, like a workflow, core data that is related there, as well as the methods for identification, then assessment itself, or evaluation of the significance. There are some emerging solutions, but they're still not widely used on the market. We also developed Envigo, which is a dedicated impact assessment solution, which uses innovative data processing concepts. So data processing is the core of it. And you may see here the screenshots out of the platform. So there are many actually parts of the platforms, and I will not go all of them. I said did it previously, but I will focus on the part of the core of the platform, which is a digital platform that offer consistent data templates and classifications that are used in the and really support the process of impact identification, as you may see here in this video that it goes on the right, the identification, but then also cross-connection matrices of the factors, and then finally the evaluation of the impact significance, different models, different methods, scoring methods that could be used, and then obviously presentation
Apologies, everyone. We seem to have lost Nicola's connection there. It indicates that he's still on, but unfortunately the video and voice have frozen. So we'll just give you a second there, Nicola, maybe to just restart your camera and just audio, because we can't hear you at the moment. Some fascinating discussion there in relation to the video that was obviously running through, showing the different layers within the Envigo model in terms of that data processing core and how different information can be input in standard metrics. I think I was spotting some baseline areas and other areas within that video. Hopefully we shall have our third presenter back shortly. So at the moment, you're just stuck with me, so apologies for that. Hopefully he'll be able to get his connection reconnected. and everything's sorted. We'll just give that a few moments. If we don't have him back in around the next 20 or 30 seconds, I might just start asking. Oh, you're back.
Yes,
So,
I'm back. I'm really, really sorry. Actually, the computer completely collapsed at the moment. Sorry about that. And can I continue? May I continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we were about 2/3 of the way, I think, through, or maybe halfway through the video that it was presenting on the data processing core, and you were talking about the consistent data inputs and that type of thing when we lost you. So I think we've just gone off that big matrix and the kind of flow diagram bit. So I'll let you decide where you want to start again. Yeah, roughly around there, I think, is where we lost your audio.
Yeah, we are somewhere there, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was showing the workflow, how it goes through the impact identification evaluation process and defining the mitigation measures. So how it's done? So it's done, as you saw, through the user-friendly setup of a single task software modules that are realized in this what we call workspace. And then there you may saw different modules, software modules that are used for impact data item selections, like a checklist, their editing, and then matrices connecting the impact factors and the attributes. Then the processors are, as we call them, those modules are used for impact scoring or impact significance evaluation and mitigation measure. And then finally, presentations for impact analysis and visualization, obviously for digital reports that follow up. So what is happening in the background? So this is how user sees it and use it. In the background, through this semi-automated process, data structure is formed. It's a kind of a network of data. So you may see here, we call it a tree because it reminds, at least in the representation, in visualization of a tree that is presented on the left-hand side. You may see here the roots are actually the sources and causes of the impact that are selected through, check those checklists, and then, for instance, activities of some project activities, and then connected to the aspects like emissions, and then further on through semi-automated process to receptors that are affected. For instance, residents through these checklists, and then finally with the effects like harms or other effects or impacts. So this is altogether how it's constructed, the impact that is here represented as a timber, we may see, which then has their properties and attributes that are related to it and identified through the process that is here ending up in a scoping process, like starting from a screening and ending up in a scoping process, and then follow up with the assessment itself. As you may see, it branches. So one impact branches depending on a applied alternative. It can have a different significance. And significance is then can be evaluated with different models, different scoring approaches. For instance, here is illustrated quite elaborated one that takes account also intensity, duration, interaction with others, sensitivity, and so on. So this is a multi-criteria evaluation that produces, in this example, that produces the impact significance for the proposed project, but also for the alternatives. The layer on top, obviously, is then defining the mitigation measures through the process, also with matching with the possibilities and the impact itself through a larger data set of mitigation measures. Then on top of it, it's a monitoring process. So overall, it's a tree, but it's only one impact in a project. We have many impacts that are then related and making kind of a, as we call it then, a forest, which it's a data network that is actually presenting a digital mosaic of a project, a stamp of a project. And then this, let's say, structured data network is then crucial for comparative analysis, according to our approach, to compare different impacts, maybe receptors group, different alternatives, overall alternatives, but also different projects from different studies. It also allows for rapid presentation and reporting, but also for the export to the other systems that we saw, reuse for other projects. This is very important feature that could be allowed through this structured data network, but also in AI supported review and guidance. More particularly, for instance, these compact and structured data could be efficiently and effectively actually used to create graphs or charts or tables, and then conduct this comparative analysis. Within these visualization possibilities and structured possibilities, then generation of reports is more efficient or quicker, and it's more also standardized and can be easier for comparison, review, stakeholder engagement, reuse, and so on. Further on, data streams that are harmonized and structured can be better and efficiently exported or exchanged with other digital systems mentioned before. See in this is the illustration of it, how those data created there could be sent out to the other systems, for instance, GIS systems, or like the ones that, for instance, Oden Systems that we had a presentation previously, that there could be embedded within the spatial plans, but then enriched from there and sent back to NVigo. This is in initial stages of let's say, scoping or analysis. Then further on, the workflow, it could be used also to send out to the environmental health and safety systems for project monitoring and management, also in a structured way. There are possibilities also for AI-supported review and suggestions. How we envisage it, obviously, those structured data can be, these are the base for a set of questions, for the prompting questions that can be sent to trained NLP model, large language models, that compare different internal resources and external resources that are available for organization or widely open source available, and that were used for trained NLP models to provide the suggestions for review, decision making, and even for predictions to a certain extent, the predictions of possible impacts and so on within the projects. So these are the possibilities that we are now investigating. So it's early stage for us. To underline, this framework is adaptable at different levels. So what you saw previously is the first layer or level of adaptation. That is, for every user, for each project, you could change the data templates, classifications, and connections, and to the environment or projects, particular projects. On top of that, the next layer is like that we could adapt and customize workflow methods and those modules for instance, for industry-wise requirements or international regulations that are similar, but they differ from different nationalities. On top of that, there is also the layer of configurations for the whole software as a service system. I will not go there in details because it's not important for this talk, but I will tell you to illustrate a little bit of this adaptability. For instance, you see the workspace here of maybe some kind of a smaller impact assessment study analysis, or maybe some preliminary impact assessment study or scoping study. You may see a few modules to screen of checklists and matrices and reports, but this could be obviously more complex, as we do have more commonly more steps within the process of a typical environmental and impact assessment study. So this arrangement, this workflow adaptable is, for instance, for typical national within the European Union or somewhere else impact assessment studies. Further on, it could be even more elaborated, as you see here, with more modules connected. That is a workflow typical for environmental and social impact assessment studies required by international financial institutions, and so this is the default state, but we could reduce it to lessly demanding processes through this modularization and adaptation. So for the summary, this database approach enables us the more efficient impact identification, evaluation, analysis, and comparison. This can expedite report production and then review and approval process, and even more with the AI NLP tools. And this structure and harmonized data can be efficiently transferred to other complementary systems like GIS, ESG, and so on. And importantly, this allows for partial or complete studies replication, which then amplifies the productivity. So one could start off from a previous study, previous knowledge, and combine several to expedite the overall assessment process. So you saw that it's a dynamic data and adaptable workflow, and this software modularization that we are addressing allows for national or international standardizations or organization-wide standardizations. And those standardizations improves then further on the efficiency and but also a quality of studies and resource management. So I would like to thank our sponsors, which were helping us in the development of the platform, and also thank you all. I will be keen to answer the questions. Josh.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nicola, for your presentation. Really, really good. As always, I'll just share my screen back with everyone. So thank you to all our presenters. We've had quite a number of questions already come through. I'm going to start off with a couple of broad ones, then I'll go to some specific ones that have been asked of Raymond and the Oden system, and Liv and Space for Good, and Nicola and Vigo. So if I could just ask Raymond, Liv and Nicola to come back in terms of just opening your camera up, that'd be fantastic. Great, we're all there. And obviously, if you do have questions, do fire them in. I'll keep looking at them and adding them on. And we've got around 20 minutes or so for the Q&A. So hopefully be able to get to plenty of them. So thanks to all of you for 3 great presentations. I'm always really excited to explore the breadth of different ways that digital approaches, and especially data availability, is expanding the kind of support and structuring those kind of approaches we're seeing to the impact assessment process that you've really ably kind of presented today. So that was really, really good. I wanted to start with a big question that's come in, which is, I guess, about the balance of data and people within the impact assessment process. So I guess given this expansion of digital data that you've all expounded in the different tools, do you feel we now have shifted from impact assessment being a kind of practitioner or human thinking led process to a point where impact assessment practice is now more data led in terms of the overall approach? Maybe if we start with Raymond on this, then go Liv and then Nicola, and then on the next one we'll do it the other way around. So over to you, Raymond.
Right. Thanks, George. My personal view is the other way around. Just like the 2 approaches I illustrate, I mean, the key thing is, I mean, the technology help to make things a bit more simple and easy now, meaning you no longer need to spend your effort to convert the data, massage it, and then or to demand very high skill to massage the data for the purpose of doing analysis upon them. Rather, you can jump onto it and then apply your knowledge, well, onto making some sense out of it, right? People been complaining about time being too short, and there's too many options or stakeholder opinion to be considered. Now, if you sort of spend all your time managing data, massaging it, find the right tool for it, compiling data, you just use up all your time on that area. That needs you very little time to sort of come up with something more better or elegant in terms of the approach you could consider, right? This is my view. So like that, this on the other one give you more room to think about something more elegant or appropriate, right? This is my point. Yeah. Simply because you got a backup of those technologies behind.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Liv, your perspective, are we still in a human-led impact assessment system, or are we moving more to a data-led system?
Yeah, thanks. Very good question. And I think, yeah, I agree as well with what Raymond said. And I think I also touched upon it already in my presentation. But I think the fact that we have now such vast amounts of data available doesn't mean that it will just be a data-led impact assessment. It means that we can maybe improve sometimes of data assessments, making it easier and making it possible in general to analyze larger areas also more consistently, and also having more often data. I think that's one of the issues now, is that you have one moment in time, but with, for example, Earth observation and other types of data sources, you can have more repeatedly data. So I think it has become a really strong part of impact assessment, but at the same time, data by itself is not enough. It still requires practitioners and local knowledge to interpret the results. For example, if I'm just focusing on the satellite point of view, a satellite can show a change in vegetation cover, but it cannot say why that happened. So it still takes people on the ground to understand whether that's due to natural cycles, humans' activity, or really restoration efforts. And yeah, so I really believe that instead of having just a data-led impact assessment, data should be more used to enhance and also improve impact assessment at this stage than really replace it.
Thank you very much. And Nicola, your perspective?
Well, I can only agree with the Liv and Raymond. I mean, human is really in the center, and this will not change as I am seeing that, for a long time, at least for our generation and maybe next one. So it is, and it can't be changed, because actually everything is produced there. All the knowledge is already there, produced by humans, even the ones that are used within the templates, within even the artificial intelligence and so on. And obviously it is important to human to stay really involved in the loop, to check and to also make sure that quality is there, that is really not a garbage, and so on. So it is to say our approach, as I think we showed it clearly here, it's really human-centric. It only the digital tools and software help and support, as Raymond said and Liv there. That is the main role, and I will not spend more time on it. That's clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay, well, we've had some questions also about stakeholder engagement. I'll get to those a little bit later. This one is related to that, but perhaps a little bit wider. So across your presentations, we've seen some great applications of digital data and how it's enhancing different areas of impact assessment practice. But these have tended to be users, I suppose, that are more for core parties, or certainly that was my perception of it. It might be entirely wrong. I suppose what I would see is like the consultants or government figures and those kind of things. But obviously with open source data, there could be the opportunity. One thing the impact assessment, state of impact, digital impact assessment report identified was the potential for digital to level the playing field. So I guess to bring that into a question, kind of, do you believe that open source data and digital tools will help to democratize the kind of impact assessment process if we go the other way this time? So Nicola first, then Liv, and then Raymond last.
Thanks, Josh. Definitely. I mean, impact assessment is really important for the public. Public is the part of the process and one of the crucial parts of the process. And in every, I mean, study, it goes for the check and involvement of the public, approval of it. Fine. I mean, so it's they're already open to, in a sense, to a public as a final results. Okay, what we presented here, for instance, in Vigo, is what is important for maybe for the practitioners or maybe for the reviewers, the experts, but also the other parts that are related to reporting, that they are really then sent out to the public with all the data that is available, that is also coming from open source data and open source, for instance, guidances and books and some best practices. So the open source is also software is written in open source in RNVigo. So they're really open. And I think these data structuring that I saw that I showed is also crucial for the public, because they could easily navigate through large bulky studies. They could easily find the key aspects or key consequences that they should focus in locally or whatever. So it is helping those structuring and digital. Again, it's a supporting tool for them, and it's democratizing also, hopefully, the whole process. Yes.
Thank you very much. Liv, your thoughts on open source data and democratization, I guess in relation to Earth observation data.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks. We really see that open source data has had a huge impact when we're speaking about remote sensing. So what I was mentioning before, the ISA and NASA have made Earth observation data sets freely available for everybody to use at 10-meter resolution. So this is really great, and also brings down the barrier of having to have loads of money in order to look into this data. We already see some differences, for example, country level. So the Netherlands even made available for Dutch, for the Netherlands region, and also for Dutch citizens, to have even higher resolution data available, which improves even applications on the Dutch ground, let's say. So you already see between countries that open source data sets can also differ. And this also, you immediately see the kind of accuracy that the models can have. So models that have to measure, for example, agroforestry systems in the Netherlands have availability to high resolution data, even though other countries don't. And then you already see differences in accuracy of these models. And this actually brings me as well to the next point. Even though that I think that this is extremely important, it's not just about making these data sets open source, it's also really creating understanding of people that are using it. What do these data sets mean? So some already analyzed open source data sets, they have caveats. So they're not as accurate in some areas or not as accurate in other areas. So you cannot just give data. You also have to kind of train people or give people the possibility to use them and understand it. And also trust the data, which is, I think, very important. So there's no data set which is perfectly showing how the reality is. So people have to, if they see maybe a difference between the reality and the data set, they might not trust it anymore immediately. And I think it's very important that we kind of learn how to use this data, how to look at the data. So it's not only about open sourcing data, but also, the digital literacy in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Raymond, finally over to you.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's certainly help democratizing things, but in a positive way, I would imagine, because People think environmental belong to the specialists, environmental specialist consultant. Yes, for the data collections and processing part. For the result of it, not quite, because the impact is the concern of all other peoples who might or may not be environmental people. So having some sort of like open data or platform, whatever, it actually help people get involved into that, or so to speak, participate into that, so that it make them easy to understand the difficulty behind. They make them understand what it is. I mean, so that they could have a more understanding of things like that. This is my view. So
Mm.
at least you got a chance for them to sort of, well, despite about accuracy or whatnot, I mean, they make them see things in the simplest way to understand, right? And something they can manipulate, play around. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go into what are hopefully some quite quick fire questions specific to each of your presentations. So we'll start off with Raymond, then we'll come to Liv, and then we'll go back to you, Nicola. So I'm going to ask your three together, Raymond. If I need to come back to them, just let me know. Is Oden System open source? How do you ensure that the data is geocoded correctly? And can the kind of sound level modeling or those type of modelings within it be adapted to different methodologies to meet national or sectoral standards or legislation?
Yeah. Thanks for the good questions. Yes, Oden System is an open platform, right? So open source is one of the platform we use. That was test fitted at the environmental agency level in Europe, right? And coming back to the accuracy, if you could remember, we use a proper process called georeferencing to reposition the map onto where it should be. Also, with the availability of a lot of like data, not just open source, but open government data. This is trusted data, right, in various format. And this is one of the good source of data where you could use it to build your application and things like that, right? So in terms of the modeling, besides the fact that there's some open source algorithm, for some of the commercial software, you can also interface or integrate with it.
Mm-hmm.
So like you sort of like pass that the model parameter to that, and then that would generate the assessment result to the regulatory format or requirement. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. There will be a question coming up across all of you once we've got through this bit about kind of the investment needed to install your platforms and the training needed, but we'll jump onto those when we get there. So moving on to you, to Liv. These are a couple for you. They're a little bit longer, but I'll ask them together to begin with. So do you use an Internet of Things specific standards or additional tools in relation to some of your coding? And a second question in relation to some more clarity just on that link between the remote sensing, the machine learning, and the impact identification that you talked about. Are these proxy layers that are being created, or is this kind of real kind of ground truth data? So those are the two question areas.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. I will start with the last one just because I remember it a bit better now. So in terms of the biodiversity layers that we develop, we are actually part of an Horizon project 2020 called Biomonitor for CAP, and I know that biodiversity is a very hot topic at the moment, but also an extremely challenging topic to measure with the use of remote sensing, because we cannot, of course, as you can imagine, we cannot measure how many insects there are on the ground or the birds flying around or the animals. So indeed, what we do is that we mostly measure proxies. So proxy for vegetation. What we can do, for example, is measure tree species variety, let's say. But other than that, it's mostly based on leaf area index, vegetation cover, and there's some other essential biodiversity variables that can be used for with the use of satellite image. So there's also more on habitat fragmentation, connectivity, and other indicators. So indeed, those are more proxy things that we can measure, and we are actually studying now which proxies stay more in which area, let's say, because you can also imagine that different parts of the world, different proxies have a bigger correlation with biodiversity than others. So this is also something that we're mapping at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Fantastic. The first question was, hopefully it makes sense. Did you use an Internet of Things specific standards in order to do your calculations, or were there additional tools that you guys had developed to move some of those remote sensing things into the analysis and tools?
Well, not necessarily Internet of Things. We don't. It's more that we follow other kinds of standards that are used, how to integrate and how to kind of combine ground observations with satellite data. So that's more what we're doing.
Thank you very much for those. So to move on to the Envigo system, we've got two questions here. So does Envigo produce time series data and predictive analysis with mapping? Or if it doesn't use its own mapping, can it be integrated with something like an ArcGIS system? And then the second question, does the Envigo web portal, does it allow potentially affected communities to kind of explore and navigate effects on their own? Is it something that you've deployed so that in any context where, you know, kind of the analysis is there and then the public can go in and play with it?
Thanks. So for the first question, we don't have the time series or other geographical systems, geographic information systems, or possibilities for processing. But as presented in there is an idea to integrate it with these systems, GIS or other. Those are possibilities, and I think that's the best option, because we didn't go into the area which is already well established, and you know, users can use different systems, some open source, some not. Maybe they have some preferences and so on. So this is for the integration. And for the second question, yeah, that's the idea, to public to participate on the platform online, to do the commenting, exploration of the studies, and participation with it. It's the stakeholder engagement part. So yes, that is it, and it's for the public. It's free. For instance, once published on the once the study is published in the domain.
Yep. Thank you very much. So to kind of, I guess, keep a similar theme alive, maybe we'll start with Liv with this one. It kind of feeds on from the question that I was just asking to Nicola in relation to, I suppose you mentioned local context and remote sensing and the need to use them together. But how can we get these digital tools to help analyze kind of stakeholder input? So, you know, a lot of what we've been looking at is remote sense data or GIS open source data, but you know, critically within these impact assessments is stakeholder input. So how do we get stakeholder input and data to kind of come together to help feed those kind of subsequent iterations, both of the impact assessment and hopefully some change in the design of the development that we're looking at?
Yeah, this is extremely important. So what we see, what we can do is that we can use actually the data to give a more complete story to the stakeholder. That's the first thing. So in order to the stakeholder can, in that sense, get all the information that it needs beforehand or during the projects. And so I think that is the main thing which is really important. And of course, then the stakeholder input still has to be taken into account as well. So what we're doing in other kinds of projects, for example, if there's reporting, impact assessment reporting needed, there is the data part, which is done, of course, by the remote sensing and everything. And then the more interpretation part of the remote sensing is then done by stakeholders, and kind of the discussion of what is being seen and what needs to be done can then be still kind of inputted by stakeholders. Yeah, and of course, if some stakeholders also have their own kinds of data, and then it's going to be really interesting to see, like, okay, how can we actually combine these data? Like, how maybe there are certain experiences that can then be seen again in proxies of remote sensing, for example. So these kind of things are very interesting to kind of discover and to explore. Yeah, so that would be my answer.
Thank you very much. Nicola, we covered something very similar with you. So Raymond, any quick view on that before I ask the last question, more about kind of access to your systems training and that kind of thing, that I'll go around each of you to close off the session today. So Raymond, any thoughts on that one about local context and getting stakeholder perspectives into these systems?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We actually focusing on visual communication things. Like the tool we have, basically, we offer a very intuitive way where people could easily visualize it. If you've got a report and you don't want to read it, then you can sort of like, well, create your area, just like what's been illustrated, in a way where it's very similar, well, which is really realistic to see what's going on, and you can manage it, right? So if you are good at some 3D modeling, you can upload your modeling in BIM or whatever, SketchUp, whatever. But you're not that good at it, then you can use the model library, you can draw on it, something like that, right? So this is kind of a visual way to help them understand what's going on, right?
Thank you very much. So one thing with these IAIA webinars is obviously people may well have commercial products, as all of these are, but we do ask our speakers not to focus on that. But inevitably, there's been lots of questions about what do these systems kind of cost in terms of upfront access? How do you access them? Is training needed? Are they web-based or downloads? So we will start with Raymond to a minute to just explain a little bit about Oden Systems and how you can that is structured, and then we'll come to Liv and then to Nicola, and that will close off our Q&A for today. So a 1 minute pitch, Raymond, in terms of what is the service that you guys offer?
Basically, we offer open platform, right, which is quite lightweighted. And then you can sort of like engage it in a very flexible way. It's entirely subscription based. And then you can also do it on a hop-on, hop-off basis. So like for the entire project life cycle, you can start with an initial planning and then hop off and then join back in the monitoring stages or somewhere in between. And we also got like a freeware now, allowing people to sort of like download the tools and set it up all by yourself, including a data update. Surely, if you need some help, then we can offer your help. But then you got a choice to do it all by yourself, setting up the website, etc., with the instruction and whatnot. So, if you guys be interested, just pop up to our website. I mean, thanks. Sorry for that.
No problem. Thank you very much. Liv, Space for Good, the products that you offer.
So just good to know is that Space for Good is up until now more of a project-based company. So what we are doing is that we use our expertise in remote sensing and Earth observation applications for specific problems that our customers have. And as I mentioned before, often open source data sets at a local level don't have the required accuracy. And that's kind of where our expertise also comes in. So we often do bespoke modeling for areas. And of course, we also do platform development, as you've seen a little bit, but this goes much far beyond what you've seen. So depending on kind of the needs of the customer, we also adapt the solution. So this is kind of, yeah, we're more of a bespoke solution provider up until now, because we have been now the last couple of months, we've been working on looking at what solutions we already have and if we can develop some kind of products out of that. But you will have to stay more tuned. So this, yeah, until now it's mostly if you see that open source datasets don't really show the local information at an accurate enough level, then we come in. Yeah.
And finally, the floor is yours to talk about Envigo for a minute.
So Envigo is a web-based platform. So it is, let's say, basic model is like software as a service, so subscription based for the default platform. So this is how it's, let's say, sold. But actually, I have to say that we are very keen to work on partnerships and also with the large organizations, maybe authorities. We are also looking into that, into adapting it as presented in the presentation, adapting into national-wise standards or larger organizations and so on. So this is something that I invite people to contact, and we could talk about those details. Once again, apologies for the breakdown of the system. See, the digital system can be fragile, and this should be also one of the points. And thank you all.
Thank you very much, and yes, thank you for yeah, that very useful reminder that you know, a system is only as strong as its weakest point, and you know, digital systems are something that is within impact assessment now, absolutely crucial to the future of impact assessment. But you know, we need to integrate them, and we need to keep that connection and bring in the stakeholders, the local context, make sure that that isn't kind of left to the side because of these, you know, kind of cool digital systems that we might be seeing, but also the thinking, processing of the impact assessment professionals, as was said in the answer to some of those first questions, and Raymond was kind of highlighting, I think everyone else agreed, of, you know, it's about supporting the individual, giving them more thinking time, and kind of taking away perhaps some of the more standard tasks that we can spend an awful lot of time on. So talking of time, thank you very much for sticking with us. There's a good 160 of you still on board, which is brilliant to see. Apologies to the very few of you who I didn't get to roughly your area of questions. Apologies in particular to the person who asked about nature-based solutions. I just simply, and remote sensing, apologies, I just simply couldn't get that in within the time. But the recording will be available. And just to close us off for today, we're going to hear back from Keisha with just a quick kind of thank you and close out from the IAIA. But from myself, and I'm sure all the audience, Raymond, Liv and Nicola, thank you very much for your time today.
Yes, thank you, Josh, and thank you all the presenters for this great presentation, and especially the really lively Q&A discussion. There were so many good questions coming through. So on that note, let's keep talking. If you are an IAIA member, feel free to post a thread in the hub about something you've heard today, and we can start a discussion that way. You can ask questions. I know at least Josh for sure is involved in there, as well as probably some of the other presenters. Again, there are our social media handle there, IAIA Network, as well as the hashtag you can use. And one last thing is, as you leave here today, you will be prompted to fill out a survey. Please do fill that out. It is really helpful not only to hear, you know, how we did today, but also gives you the chance to suggest some future topics. And especially if you know, had questions that didn't get answered and you'd like to hear something in a future webinar, please do fill that out, because we do use that to gear our future webinars and try to find speakers that can give webinars on the topics that you're interested in. So again, please feel free to fill that out and give us all the comments and suggestions you have. Again, to our presenters, thank you so much. This was a great presentation, and we'll all see you next time. Thank you so much.